Welcome back to the Fantasy Rugby Draft podcast. Thanks for downloading and listening. My name's Bruce Wilkinson. It's a monumental day in podcast history. In the booth is the man primarily made of moss, Nathan Mossman. Welcome back. How are you?
Kia ora, Bruce. Kia ora, Bruce. Get the pie.
Haere mai, haere mai. So I was going to actually completely shelve all talk of rugby tonight and just entertain the listeners with some of the conspiracy theories about where you have been over recent weeks. The first one being, first week out, put it down to your monthly sunbed, but clearly it's been a bit of an Indian summer and 1 week turned into two, and we know you only get it done once a month. So another conspiracy theory that was proffered up by one of our listeners was that perhaps you'd gone bush with Keith Murdoch, or at least homage to Keith Murdoch. Which actually probably isn't too far from the truth. I'm not sure about the homage bit, but the bush bit perhaps. And then recently, more recently, someone has suggested that perhaps you've had your hands full with your day job being sponsorship manager for Israel Folau. Which one of those is closer to the truth?
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. I mean, they're all good suggestions. I mean, it's much better than the stuff that you normally come up with, at least. At least the last few weeks has give you sort of some time to work on your comedy. You might need a couple more. So.
It's true. Comedy in echo chamber. I was patting myself on the back.
Yeah, actually, I know Keith Murdoch's niece, actually.
Oh, really?
Just apropos absolutely nothing, but yeah.
Yeah. We've actually got one of our managers in the Straven Road League is named after Keith Murdoch. So he's 0-8, I think it is at the moment, or something like that.
Yeah, he's going about as well as Keith Murdoch is, actually.
Yeah, exactly. All right, follow us on Twitter at Fantasy Rug Draft. That's Fantasy RUG Draft, or drop us a note at support@fantasyrugbydraft.com. Apple Podcast and on Stitcher. Give us a review if you'd like. Better yet, just share it with your mates. That's how we get more listeners. That's how we get and keep the lights on. Let's start with Hurricanes Sharks. What are your two talking points? Or sorry, what are your main talking points for these two teams?
Nothing out of this one.
No.
No, I've got 7 players I want to talk about, and there's no one in this game.
Excellent. All right.
So basically, I won't be taking questions on anybody else. I did watch it, of course.
Yep.
And everyone will be talking about Barrett, who is back next week. And if you were lucky enough to get the news about West, you probably would have played him like I did, because I think it was always going to be a pretty good shout. I actually, weirdly enough, I picked him up during the week thinking, because I had 0 options at fly half. You know, I was looking at you to Mura. Yeah. And I actually thought to myself, well, I just had a feeling that he'd get a few minutes being the hometown boy. Yep. But I was kind of working under the assumption that the Hurricanes might have been up, you know, and they could afford to give him some time. Obviously, that's not at all how it played out. So, yeah. But I still think he was always going to be a good play if you were quick enough to get on the spot.
Yeah, and I think you're probably right. 5 minutes of Ihai West is probably better than 80 minutes of Yu Tamura, or 70 as it turns out. Shout out to the Tamura family earning a living. So I think we have learned a little bit more that the goal-kicking ranking is Barrett, West, Geordie. Sorry, let me rephrase that. Beauden, Ihai, and Geordie as the 3. I think there was a little bit of a contention whether it was going to be Geordie Barrett kicking or Ihai West if both were on the field at the same time, and it looked like it was, well, clearly it was West in this instance.
No, it knows every blade of grass at Mapimpi, so you had to play him.
Yeah, as you pointed out though, so Beauden Barrett is playing, does look to be playing this week. That's what the noise out of Boyd. It sounds as though, I mean, it's not for anything, but they sound as though it might not be kicking though, which just means it's a bit of a bump for Geordie, but it doesn't really matter for the Geordie owner or the Beauden owner. You're starting both of them.
No, probably the other thing that's worth mentioning, it's nothing to do with the actual game, is that the kind of articles I was reading today were pointing out that what Boyd does is that if you don't train fully on a Monday, he won't pick you for the Saturday. So it's actually probably one of the rare insights we get into what coaches do around selections, and him throwing us a frickin' bone in the way that so many others don't. So that's actually quite helpful. So it looks like no TJ this week, but there will be a Barrett, both Barretts actually.
Yeah, that's right.
Particularly a Beauden Barrett.
Yeah, the TJ one is an interesting one. It sounds like they suspect it might be a medial ligament in his knee. Not too sure the length of it, but if you just looked at the fixtures, I think they'll be quite smart about it. He definitely won't be playing this week, by the sounds of what that article was saying. They've got the bye after that, and then they have the Sunwolves. So it wouldn't surprise me if you see 3 weeks without Perenara if they're smart about it. Jamie Booth, not exactly a like-for-like replacement from fantasy rugby perspective, and probably not for rugby perspective either. Obviously got the box-kicking memo at half-time. What about Julian Severe? Where do you come down on which way he is trending?
I think he looks okay. I don't really have a strong opinion. If I had him in my team, which I don't, I'd still probably roll him out most weeks.
Yeah, I think he's just on the cusp of that kind of 3 and 4. We're getting a lot of questions, certainly in the Start Bench show, about where Jules fits in. Personally, I would be looking to try and sell with the players that are coming back, and also looking at what's happened in previous seasons with his form. And as I say, they've got the Sunwolves in 2 weeks' time, so maybe you give that a chance there. And we know that Milner-Skudder, by all accounts, not by all accounts, by one account, could be back for that match, and it's likely to be off the bench. So there's also Wes Houston to throw in the mix, and Matt Proctor will come back as well, so maybe that puts Arso out. So I just think that it's going to become a really, really scrambled view, and I think it's almost as though Severe's had his time in the saddle, and there's a lot of those other fringe guys that are going to take up more games in the second half of the season than Severe. And
yes.
Also, go on.
Yeah, sorry, no, I was just going to say just about Milner-Skudder. So he is a guy that has been kicking around on a few waiver wires. I pulled the trigger and picked him up leading into this week, just because I thought now is probably a good time to stash. So if he is out there, think about it.
100%.
The bench spot.
100%. I think that's smart. Because I think managers are slowly going to get, and that's going to become more in the mainstream media. At the moment, I don't think it's widely purported, but that will surface, and then you'll miss out on your waiver wire pickups. I don't think Arso is doing a hell of a lot aside from that long run. He didn't play particularly well in the one against the Rebels as well. We don't know when Proctor's back, do we?
No.
It's a rib, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was only supposed to be a couple of weeks, and so in theory he should have been playing this week and then didn't.
Yeah. Okay, all right. What about the Sharks? What's your take on that? I guess a lot of folks are asking about Mapimpi, and I guess I'll probably cover this off. We got a bit of information late last week that Mapimpi, he's not injured. It's more to do with how the coach wants to approach a particular game, and he hasn't wanted to approach it with Mapimpi recently, but when they get back to South Africa, by this account, it sounds as though Mapimpi is going to be getting a run. So I guess that has implications for Mvovo and Kosi as well. And Kosi not exactly lighting it up as you'd hope, but Sharks going well since Van der Valt's been back and Jean-Luc's been back. That team looks pretty strong. You've got Mapimpi. What are you doing about it? You own him in a couple of leagues, don't you?
That's right. Yep.
Sitting, waiting?
Well, of course. I mean, what's your alternative?
Yeah, I don't know. I wondered if you're at the point that you maybe want to get 70 cents for him or something like that. Get something like maybe a Tambwe or something like that.
No, because I think all those kind of guys are just short-term options.
Yep, I think you're probably right. Sharks front row starting to kind of turn the corner a little bit as well. They even got a yellow card in this and still put up a pretty good performance. I don't really have too much else. I think Cam Wright was someone that the Sharks supporters have been screaming for over Louis Schroeder, but I thought Schroeder actually looked pretty good in that first half, and Cam Wright certainly didn't. Anything more from these two?
No.
Sunwolves Waratahs. Do you see this match? This is fun.
Oh,
it's always fun, isn't it?
I saw the highlights, but I guess these games are just all highlights anyway, aren't they?
Absolutely. I might have to cash my chips in with Michael Little. Man, he looks so ungamely, but he just keeps getting it done.
So Michael Little is one of the guys on my list.
Right. Go.
So he's the form midfielder at the moment, and so he's put up sort of 20 and a couple of 10s and now 30 odd or something. So he keeps getting it done. He was a pretty average sort of an ITM Cup player.
Yeah.
It didn't stand out really. He was okay. He's decent, but Yeah, if he keeps doing it, then I suppose at some point you kind of got to buy into it a little. Obviously he's got one of the easiest games this weekend. Well, I mean, you kind of joke about it, but
I know.
based on what happened last year, and the way that the Blues are travelling this year, it's not hard to imagine that there's going to be a lot of points.
13 missed tackles from the Blues front row last week. Sunwolves are going to love that. No, I'm the same with you with Michael Little. It's set aside the fact that was miles forward the last pass, but he just keeps on finding himself in these positions, and he's not particularly going fast or making lines or running over people. He's just got a motor, just got an engine that just keeps on going and going and going and keeps popping himself up there. I think he's someone you've got to take seriously. His full name is Michael Little, Walter Little's son, isn't it? That's what it's on the birth certificate?
Absolutely, yep.
Himano, number 8. Interesting one. So he's listed as a lock for us. There's always a little bit of a running kind of lock anyway in previous seasons, and certainly for the J League. I think if you've got him, if you've got an opportunity to get him, I think there's going to be either he's going to be at 6 or at 8. He looks to be solidifying himself at 8 there. He scored 25 points this week. Another
guy on my list.
Excellent. There you
go. So So exactly as you've said, playing out of position and all the rest of it, and especially in a season so far where lock is pretty uninspiring. A lot of the time I'm actually playing without one. And not missing them too much. Even some of the guys that I thought would do quite well, the kind of guys like Lousy, you just can't rely on them. And I think this is where him and he's just got to offer you a little bit more.
Yeah, as you pointed out at the start, the highlight reel games, the Sunwolves games, there's always, he made a good clean break, but he does those pick and goes where he picks and goes himself. So he gets tackled, drops the ball, stands up, picks the ball up again, and he did that 2 or 3 times. And our data provider seems to reward that quite handsomely, so more for that. Merrigo rounded outside backs again, so not great for Matsushima and Lemeki, but Masarewa got that big try, and Jose Samaki would have got that try had it not drifted a little bit forward from Michael Little as well. He would have been a good play for 10 minutes if he'd managed to finish that off. As it was, he didn't. Any more from the Sunwolves? I'm going to have a quick chat about the Waratahs.
No, I mean, I think there'll be some good plays for the Sunwolves this week against the Blues, but I wouldn't put any money on who they're going to be. And that's the problem, is that you'll literally have to wait till that team sheet comes out and you won't really have any clear idea.
It's frustrating, isn't it? Even in midfield, you could see Lemeki come in, you got Lafaili there, Little, every chance they could... Yeah, Tupou, exactly, mate, exactly. Waratahs, Naiyaravoro, fit, playing well. He's just lumbering, isn't he, up the sideline fast, and people are just swatting and dropping off him. It's incredible. It's not getting close to him. It's crazy. I got Newsom, that's who I wanted to talk about in the Waratahs team. So a lot of managers had onboarded him with the hope that they saw the Sunwolves. Seemed that once Naiyaravoro got one kind of break, they figured, right, all we really need to do is just get the ball out to that wing. And it just didn't really run out towards the right for Newsom. You're pretty comfortable cutting straight away if you've got better options?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, I thought the same thing. Hegarty, it looked like a Hignot. Did you see? You may not have seen that if you just saw highlights. Beale went into fullback, so depending on how that kind of comes out during the week, Beale going back to 15 certainly increases his value.
Did you say Hignot? Is that something that's specific to Hegarty?
Hegarty knock, yep, that's right.
the Hignot. Yeah, exactly. Which could have been on any part of his body.
Nice. I'm not sprinting to pick up Miller, the flanker. I think he got most of his points in that. It was a good try he scored, but I'm not entirely sure they're going to see that every week.
No, I did the same thing. I picked up Michael Wells and played him this week, but he'll be another on the chopping board just to find somebody else.
Yep, indeed. All right, let's move on to your beloved Blues. Where do you want to start with them? Have you got any of those players for him?
Actually, the only one out of this game that's on my list, there is somebody that's just recently come in, and that's, I saw you up to your old tricks in one league. I think, do you know what I'm talking about?
No.
No? Okay. I saw a trade that you put through this afternoon.
Oh, so yeah,
this is somebody that I can see how this works. You've gotten somebody's ear and you've told them, you're a few games off the playoffs. You need to win now. Perifit is he's gonna win you a few games. Richie Mo'unga's not gonna help you right now. He's still out for a few weeks, and kind of sort of spun the tale. It's pretty much how it goes. You're that annoying guy that
sold on the dream.
And also that when you're the commissioner of a league, you know everybody, and you can convince them to do trades that other people couldn't. And it's exactly the same as when we used to play NFL. But so that's what you come up with here. And it's an interesting one because I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, man, Perifita is lucky to even be playing. I actually feel that if he wasn't the kind of the future and the big rising star, that Bryn Gatland is probably actually better than him right now.
No, 100%.
Did you see those 2 dropouts? Oh
yep.
My God.
They were enlightening. They were amazing. He did it the week before. I don't know if I'm the same. I don't think he's playing particularly well. He's scoring a lot of points for fantasy, but I don't. Yeah, you're right. I think there's a point where Tana looks at it and says, maybe there's a problem here as well. It's too early. I'm not sure. There's flashes of brilliance, but I think there's a lot of inconsistency there, and the Blues really need some kind of direction at the moment. But back to your tale of fiction. So would you like to know exactly what did happen?
Yeah, go on.
It's a radically different angle. So said manager, Organised Chaos, offered it to me Tuesday last week. Said, would you like Mo'unga for Perifita? And I was like, okay. I'd heard that Mo'unga actually might be back a little bit earlier. I think a few people had heard that, and that his jaw was recuperating better. So I put the trade through at about 5 o'clock on Friday evening, and I forgot about it until I saw trade accepted at 3 o'clock this afternoon when the trade buttons became available back on the site. Now, if you'd looked at my team, you'll see I've got Damien Willemse who's on a bye. So I needed Perifita this week, and I'm playing Organised Chaos this week as well. So I'm in a massive hole now.
That's clever. I like that.
It is rookie. It is a rookie mistake from me.
That's brilliant. Okay, I'm good with it now.
Yeah, absolute shocker. So there's a lesson in there, and you've brought it up time and time again, is just to make sure you know what trades you have out there, because they don't get reset after the game lock. Back onto the Blues, so Moala picked up an injury. Not too sure the length of that injury, shoulder injury. What do you make of Rico at 13?
I'm not really going to pick on Rico so much, and I'm probably going to indulge in some real rugby talk for a second here. But the Blues, this scoreline was really flattering to them because they were second best by miles in this game. The Chiefs, even with all their injuries, they blew so many chances. They had all the territory. The Blues basically didn't threaten until, that was a period just before half time. Yep. It was just amazing to me. Like on another night, they would have got, humped by sort of 20 to 30 points. That's how bad I thought they were. So.
What do you put that down to? What's going? I don't know. I scratched my head. I mean, I've got a few theories. What do you put that down to?
I think it's a tricky one. Like, I think part of it is the whole direction thing. Like, I mean, they've got that 9-10 axis is clearly not working. It's not getting them into the opposition half. But they also, I'm sort of unconvinced really about the loose forward trio. Akira obviously looks good with ball in hand. Good at attacking, but they just don't seem to threaten at the breakdown as far as turnovers go and the kind of their accuracy around the breakdown. They don't have that kind of menace, that you get from the kind of the Hoopers or the Cox or the Sam Canes of the world, that kind of thing. It's partly those are probably some technical things which may or may not be right, but the rest of it just seems to sort of be about belief, really.
Mm. Yeah. No, look, I think you've hit the. I think there's a 7. They missed that Fetcher, that battler, that Sam Cane at the ruck, even like a Todd, someone like that. They missed that. I think a big miss. There's a big step down from Pulu. Augustine Pulu. I thought Sam Nock was going to be that player. He's New Zealand 20s, that kind of player. But Jonathan Ruru looks like he's Rocky Balboa and Rocky Balboa 3 when he comes out. You know, he's strapped up to the hilt. You can hardly see him. He's like limping around everywhere. Like he's just been cleaned up. Everything's really slow and laboured. I think there's something a little bit more systemic there as well with the inconsistency. But yeah, that's probably for another day.
Yeah, and the other thing is that they just seem to struggle to turn defense into attack. So in areas where there are turnovers, you see that the Chiefs guys just come up from the back to make themselves available, like run onto the ball. They sense opportunities really quickly, and the Blues just don't seem to have that sense.
No. Yeah, and it's true actually. A lot of teams build their personalities around their 15s. You know, how sparky they are. Like Havili isn't the quickest guy, but he's there with offloads and trying to make a break. And that's kind of how the Crusaders are. Whereas if you looked at, like, let's say the Chiefs last year, and Alamilo actually as well, incredible. You know, just scything, pace first up, and real eye for a gap. Whereas Michael Collins, great, really good player, but just, you know, and he is very, very serviceable, but in terms of the 15s compared to those guys, it just seems to, as you say, they struggle to really have that counter-attack, which is when a lot of the defences are spread and when they're not actually ready. So, yeah, I think there's something there too.
Actually, yeah, just to get sidetracked for a second, but I mean, the great example of that is Billy Slater, for instance, like who, you know, that he sort of defines the way that they attack. You know, he just comes from the back, senses those opportunities, and, you know, just sort of carves up, like just appears in the right place.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Best form of defence. Duffy, good grief. Is there a guy that does less on a rugby field at the moment?
Yeah, it's sort of strange, isn't it? Like, the longer he stays at the Blues, the more Blues-like he becomes.
The crazy thing is that you're going to have to play him this week, aren't you? I mean, you're not going to bench him against the Sunwolves, right?
No, absolutely not. I mean, you're probably holding him for games like this, really.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Any more from the Blues?
No.
Chefs.
So the only comment I really wanted to make about them was I remember you at one stage, probably it was 2 weeks into the season, saying you were sort of abandoning ship on the Chiefs front row. Well, imagining it's that jumping back on that bandwagon now. I mean, they are the form front row and just showing some really good signs. There's one passage of play that you might remember where Mackenzie came in at sort of first receiver, and then second receiver was Ta'avao, who transferred it to Harris and then on to Ross, and the pass from Harris to Ross to put him into the gap was behind him, and Aiden Ross came out with his amazing sort of one-handed pickup behind him, like kind of on the run. Yep. But I don't ever recall seeing all three front rowers involved in midfield transferring the ball to each other like that. Yep. You know, it really stuck out in my mind, you know, because it was such a rarity. And that's kind of the way they're playing, you know, that they're carrying strongly, willing to sort of transfer. They just look really good.
Yeah, totally agree. I think they do look really good. I've seen written by some fairly knowledgeable folks that, you know, if we've got some problems at loose here, that Aiden Ross could be the solution. If we go down the list at the moment, you know, there's a bit of a dearth there. So I agree, and I look back at so they were playing the Crusaders and the Blues in those first two matches, and maybe they were the exception. Maybe the rule is actually the other 6 weeks, which I think you have to go with. The eye test says it as well. DMaks injury, obviously a bit of a shame for him, still racked up a whole bunch of points before he went off, which is pretty impressive. It sounds like it probably this week. It sounds like they might be okay for next week. Is that what you're reading as well, hamstring?
The article I read, it's hip, and sounds, I would say he probably misses this week and then almost definitely back the week after for the Reds.
Yeah, that's what I said. That's what I kind of thought as well. And a lot of managers are going to ask what value Marty McKenzie has. Do you think it'll be Marty McKenzie? Or do you think he was there on the bench because he offers more versatility than, say, Falcon?
Yeah, I mean, I hate actually speculating on these kind of things because I don't have anything to base it on other than what I've seen, which is there was a game where Falcon started, and I don't know if Marty McKenzie was fit at that stage. I don't know. That was against the Blues. Sure. Okay. So there you go. So our evidence is pretty scant. All we know is that Marty was chosen on the bench and he came on and based on that, you might say it's 70-30 that it's going to be Māori.
Yeah, it's a really difficult one to speculate. Will you tell me as a Chiefs supporter, he didn't impress very much in that 40 minutes. He didn't look, and look, it's a big step down to his brother, obviously, and it's a different type of player, but he just didn't get that back line moving as I kind of would have hoped. And I was a little bit surprised, and Gunshammer brought this up actually on Twitter, a little bit surprised that Charlie Ngatai didn't come on just to provide a little bit of something at 12. So a little bit concerning there that potentially they wanted to take him out of the firing line in a New Zealand derby. I'm not too sure, but I wasn't very impressed with Marty Mack, and it makes me wonder whether maybe Tian Falcon will steer the ship a little bit better. But it's a massive match, so maybe they go with experience. But as you say, we are speculating, very much speculating. Hurricanes next for them. Anything more from the Chiefs?
No, there isn't really. One thing I would say is it wouldn't surprise me if DMaks actually did line up.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm saying that if it sounds like he's highly dubious, but I still think there's kind of maybe a sort of 20 to 30% chance that he actually gets out there. I mean, he's incredibly durable, though. He had some stats up there today about he's played every single one of the last 48 games or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And played 80 minutes in 40 of them or something like that.
It's impressive. No, it's very, very impressive. The last 40 minutes against the Blues makes me think that they're going to do everything to try and get him out there for Friday night. It's a pity it's a Friday night game as well. Maybe he had that extra day up his sleeve. All right, Reds Brumbies. What do you want to go from here? I guess Ben Lucas getting knocked out? Or one of the Lucases? Is it Ben or is it?
No, there was a guy called Lucas that got knocked out.
That's right.
Yeah. Which didn't feature highly on my list of talking points from the game, to be honest. But
no, I thought the only knock on from that though is that Tuttle took over the goal kicking when he came on, so it took it away from Lance.
Sure.
So there is a kind of a knockdown, and Tuttle actually picked up 12 points, and most of that was a clean break, or say most of it, whatever it was, 30% is a clean break, and the rest were goal kicking. But just a point to know as well.
Yeah, but going back to what was somewhere near the start of the season when it was James Tuttle re-signed to be the future of the blah 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 team, whatever it was, and then see you later, you'll be stopped 2 weeks later.
Yeah.
So we've got a lot of guys that are the future. You're just one of them, and your future's not particularly bright.
It was good to see him actually get some run meters. I think it was 8 or something.
Is that what he's been working on while he's been out there?
Yeah, that's right. So he's
running.
800% increase.
They said to him, right, so that's the direction you need to head in. That's what you've been doing wrong.
Yeah, a little bit surprised. Like, if you watch the first 20 minutes of this game, and if you watch Twitter, it was, let's burn down Canberra. Jeez, the Brumbies are absolute mud, but they flicked a switch and turned it around nicely. They were very, very impressive.
Well, it was surprising, wasn't it? Because Brumbies have been really uninspiring and the Reds have been pretty good, so not quite sure what happened here. Yeah,
that's right. So Higgins just looks like he's every minute, every ball carry, every tackle is a red card waiting to happen. He's so nervous. I had him in one of my teams. It's just a necessity, and I'm just watching it through my fingers.
I think what he's done is he's shaved off his beard so that maybe the refs won't recognise him. So he's kind of in disguise. He's thinking, well, if they don't know it's me, maybe they'll just take it easy,
Yeah, I see that.
It's like, oh, you mean the guy that just used to come in with the swinging arms? Yeah, that's somebody else. That's that guy with the beard.
I don't think that's what they're going to be looking when he turns up naked outside a police station. Oh, he's got no beard on, right. Timu looks the business, though. He looks like he's going to continue in that kind of Higginbotham role at the start of the season, carrying the tram lines. He looks pretty impressive. People talk about him.
Would be a different mugshot, though, wouldn't it?
Yep. The one that I don't want to see.
Yeah, anyway, sorry, sidetrack. Caleb Timu was one of the guys on my list. Okay. Yeah, so absolutely. So probably somebody, I'd say it'd be good to, maybe we could do this at some point. Actually, yeah, I keep saying that, do this at some point. Would we come up with stats to see ownership percentage? Because I'd love to know how owned Caleb Timu is.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Yep, no, that's true. I think you'll see it an increase, but I think that's worthwhile, and I think he should be owned in every league.
Absolutely, yeah. But I still feel that he's probably sort of 30 to 40% of leagues. He might be still sort of kicking around out there. Maybe that's a bit ambitious, but yeah, he might be. And so if he is, like, 100%, go and sort of jump on him.
Yeah, absolutely. You've got the first overall pick next year. You're going the Reds front row?
Absolutely, yeah.
Actually,
I said a few weeks ago, and that this is not why I haven't been turning up, by the way, but I did say, like, oh yeah, next time I come on, I'll turn up and we'll give you some stats about, which are the front rows that, how they accumulate their points, which players are kind of the standouts. Well, it turns out we don't have that. we don't.
That would have been useful.
Yeah, it would have been super useful, but no, we don't have that. We only, from a fantasy points point of view, we actually only keep it at a front row level.
Right.
So it's not actually in the database, so we can't.
Sure.
Well, yeah, which would have been interesting, but,
it would have been interesting because, he got injured. Tupu got injured and he went off with a shoulder. I think the assumption in the Reds front row is that he's picking up the points, but I don't think that's true. I think like Pangamosa, I think his name is, and there's a couple other players that are actually going really, really well. I
don't think Pangamosa is even anywhere near close to what his name is, but
is that in the database?
But I take your point. Yeah, absolutely. Like he's been pretty good too. But Tupou, apparently, he injured the shoulder and kept playing, so he played on for sort of 20 minutes or so with the injury, so you could argue that it's not that serious. But they weren't the front row that I actually wanted to talk about in this game, because I actually thought that the Brumbies haven't been poor for most of the season, and this is one of these things that the commentators did actually point out, that having not been able to get a rolling maul together, to save their life the entire season, they finally started to get it together. And whether that's because Pocock is there, I mean, it shouldn't be, but obviously it helps. So he got on the end of one, I think, but the front rowers were involved as well. And, there was a front rower that scored a try in this one, I can't remember. You'll probably remember it. Get it wrong, of course, but you'll remember it. And, so I think the Brumbies, they might be about to come good as a front row.
I think so as well. They always have a little bit of ball and handish type play when they were good, and they just seem to go away from that. But they woke up sometime during this game, and as you say, they figured out how to do that rolling maul. That was one of the players I've got written down here as well, as Brumbies front row to pick up if he's available, because I know that the first kind of 6-7 game weeks that they've been pretty ordinary, that they have been sitting on the waiver wire. That's been them. The Jaguares and the Sunwolves are kind of the ones that you're picking up week in, week out, maybe even the Bulls as well. But those are the ones you kind of free agent fodder that you've been looking at. But I'd certainly think you can have a go at them now. I think they're good. Good to see Issa Nasarani.
Yeah, I mean, we liked him anyway.
Yep.
So in some ways, I don't take it as a big surprise. It's just good to see, I guess, if you're an owner, that he's sort of delivering on the promise. The other player that I sort of wanted to point out was Chance Penny.
I thought you were going to say Jimmy D. I love it when you do your Jimmy D bit.
Jimmy likes what he sees. Yeah. Just more the fact that he's went out of favour. Whether that was injury related or not, I don't know. But he provides a little bit of spark. Just seems to sniff out opportunities, even in a team which is not particularly expansive. Like, he'll kind of get his. So he's a player that's been on waiver wires, so is worth a look, I think. And really the only other thing in this game was the goal kicking on both teams. So you talked about Tuttle, but Tuttle didn't get the kick until John O'Lance missed one from right in front. Yeah. And then Hara went down the end and missed one, maybe two from right in front. They both got the yank after that. They both got the hook and somebody else took over. Yeah. It was weird because they were so close together too. It was almost like Hara watched Lance and saw him do it and then got the yips watching him do it, Yep. It's like it got into his head. It's like, my God, that was a bad kick. I hope I don't do something just like that. And get on the other end and do something just like that.
Absolutely. I've got those two written down here, Lealefano and Howard, actually, because Howard was being shopped about in one of our leagues all week as like the saviour, when someone needed an outside back, and they were trying to sell what is actually a fly half scarce league, which I think most leagues are. But yeah, he got the goal kicking taken away from him. I think he scored -2 points all up as well. Lealiafano took it back. He actually did okay. He's been alright even without the goal kick. And I say alright, it's double-digit points, but it's very low double-digit points. I suspect it'll probably go back to Harborough, though, next wehe's looked like, as you said, it's the yips. He's usually like an 80-85% goal kicker. And Lealiafano not so much.
No, all of which to say is probably don't get too excited about Tussle either, because it wasn't like he came on and took the goal kicks. It took a pretty awful attempt from Lance for him to actually get the job. I think he missed one, but then he slayed one into the post, which went over from bang in front, I think, as well. And it was at that point they were like, it's not your night.
Yeah, that's right. Did you like the Pocock Hand of God?
What was that?
So that was the Karevi non-try.
Oh, yeah.
Right at the end, which
they
would have won it. Well, we don't know that. They probably would have shinned the kick and gone to the corner flag.
I suppose that was only a talking point, or it could have been, but more from the point of view that why would you not go to the video ref?
Well, why?
When it would have been all up on the screen, and we've seen refs do that before, is kind of change their mind and say, okay, well, actually, we'll go and have a look. I'm not going to be too proud. I don't know whether they've been told stop doing that because players will come over and tell you to go to the screen, but I don't know. He was just adamant. I'm not doing it. And
totally. I wonder if being in Canberra, whether there was limited replays on the big screen.
Exactly. Yeah.
There was enough players yelling at him. You would have thought that something was up. Something. And they're quite good with that slap back now. That, they're very conscious that that's play on if it's ripped out or it's slapped back. Because I think, was it Nasarani that did one for his try? When Higginbottom ripped it out on the ground and it was a penalty against him, so it was play on.
Yeah, that one was one where I fast-forwarded it, rewound it, and looked at it quite a few times, and in the end I just gave up. I just said, whatever you want to call ref. I'm not going to argue with you because I was like, I don't want to be the guy having to make that call.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, any more from the Brumbies?
No.
Right, let's get into, let's do a little quiz. Let's do our 4 in form, brought to you by Manager Pro, where winning is everything. Go to www.fantasyrugbydraft.com/Manager Pro. Give us one of the 4 players in form, Nathan.
DMaks.
Number 2. Well played, sir. It's first off the lips, isn't it? Straight off, just to get Settler.
Every week.
It's like an opening batsman.
Yeah. It's just outside the eye line, so I know I can let one go.
Leave it on length.
Yeah. Actually, I do know who the people are because I was interested to see what the form players were like across different positions, and just in the course of doing that, I actually know who these are. So Naiyaravoro.
We'll cut that bit out, but carry on. Yeah, Naiyaravoro.
Yeah. Bob Dupree.
Yep, number 4.
And I did know who this was, and...
Think form, think recent.
And it's drawn a little bit of a blank here. Okay.
Very recent.
Very recent.
Yep.
Tambwe.
Yep, number 3. Yep, absolutely. So that's our 4 in form. Actually, it's really, really valuable at this time of season. First kind of, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 weeks, the value you really get from Manager Pro is lineups and being able to search in the player hub for starting players. And also for players with none, because then you can figure out whose team hasn't been named as well. But we're starting to get to the point now where you look at your player hub and you've got your Diantes at your top and your injured players at the top who actually aren't going to be coming back for a while. So it's really, really valuable to look for that form or the average points per game as well. And then just kind of overlay that with general, common sense, and you find yourself some wee gems in there. Let's jump on to Lions Stormers. Lions, first of all, I guess, is on a bye this week, so there's going to be a lot of decisions made, or a lot of decisions need to be made around players to drop. Are you okay with teams dropping Mapo?
Not really.
No?
No. I'm still a believer.
Are you a Mapo owner?
No, I'm not.
I think if you're a Mapo owner, you might have a different view.
I see. Okay. Yeah.
Like people were panicking before this week. However, that try that he scored was a bit of a fluke in so much as that, it was pretty much on Ruan Combrinck's right wing. I don't see it particularly being repeatable. And outside of that, he's been single digits. He's been pretty anonymous. I'm just trying to bring up his last kind of few points now. So he got 11.7 in this, and that was mainly made up of that try and about 40 yards. He got 67 all up. Then he got 3.8, minus 0.3, 2.6, 0.5, 5, and then the first 2 weeks were 21 and 29. They got a bye, and now they're going on tour as well around Australasia. Don't know. I think if you need to cut this week, and there's going to be a lot of players that, a lot of fantasy goodness that are being on a bye, I would put Mapo as a candidate.
So you'd take Michael Little over him, for instance, right now?
Yeah, I would. I would take that to the bank. Goodness me. Shit that I didn't expect to be saying at the start of the season.
That's right.
Goodness me. Rohan van Rensburg again out 1 week. We kind of hoped he would be back for this match, but quickly becoming a mixture of bust and unfortunate for him, being so high. Bit of a shame. What do you make of Tambwe's effort? Do you think it seems as though the Lions just keep on producing wingers? So you start to wonder at what point is it the wingers or is it the system?
Yeah, well, for this one, it was actually. I mean, he showed less in this than say what Deante did.
Yep.
Where he kind of made a lot of his own tries. From memory, I think 3 of the 4 might have come from kicks. I mean, I could be wrong. It might have been even 2, but there were definitely a lot of kind of bounce of the balls and running onto kicks involved. So some good play inside him and him sort of benefiting. But yeah, I mean, he showed speed, but all those wingers that we've seen for the Lions, they always have speed. Yeah. So what's kind of separating Tambwe from some of the other guys? And to be honest, probably not a lot.
No, that's right. You hope for these types of games, but I'm not sure you clearly can't bank on them. I didn't think it was a particularly good matchup for the Lions either, so yeah, fair play to the manager who was starting him. There was quite an amusing point halfway through the first half where the Lions had remembered that Tambwe can't actually catch a high ball or doesn't like his kickoffs, and Kutsia swapped him around, went and physically grabbed him and stood him on the 10-metre mark, and he took his place back at the left. It was pretty amusing. Combrinck was okay. Stat correction overnight made his performance look a little bit better. Played quite well from a rugby perspective, just didn't really get the breaks, and I think if he had been, he was right there for the Mapo try. He ordinarily would have got that. I think better things to come for him. Any more from the Lions?
Don't think so.
Stormers. I don't really have too much to say, especially because they're on the bye. The only thing I was going to mention was that the goal-kicking merry-go-round has gone back to SP Murray. I don't think that's a massive knock on Willemse, though. He seems to pick up all of his points, just hot-stepping his way around the rugby field. Jesus Christ. But it is a nice kind of higher floor for SP Murray, who hasn't quite clicked into his gears yet. Anything? Have you got any players on Stormers you want to talk about?
No, I mean, I didn't. I actually only just saw highlights of this game. I didn't actually see it, but there's some really unreliable players kicking around for the Stormers at the moment. Guys that you can't hang your hat on. I mean, coming into the season, I hope we did it on a podcast, but I did say that I worried about Lades being repeatable.
Yep.
From what he did last year. I probably even said the same thing about SP.
Yep.
But I was more worried about Lades, and it's kind of, at this stage, is sort of panning out that way. Obviously, it's too early to tell, but.
No, yeah. Not a great tour, and I thought he might be a little bit better when he gets back home, but I think I said a couple of weeks ago, he finds himself at the pillars of rucks, or being that person that just steps over the ball for the halfback when the halfback's on the ground somewhere waiting for the halfback to get up. He seems to be there more than any other winger that I've seen. And that kind of, when you see that, it's the same thing that you see when, the coaches talk about Julian Severe trying to find contact. Doesn't really back himself. So a little bit worrying there for Lades. Hopefully with a little bit more of the South African games, to finish the season for next 8 weeks that he gets a little bit more in. But yeah, worrying signs.
What do you think it is about him that makes him such a good pillar? They've obviously pegged him out and said, look, you're the guy. We need you to be a pillar.
Size, bulk, ponytails,
presence.
all three. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you had to cut a pillar out of cardboard in a workshop, that's probably what you go for. Something with a PT,
Absolutely.
something the size of Dylan Loads. Do you want to talk about any players on the Highlanders, Bulls, Rebels who are on a bye? I guess Sopawanga is the one that's everyone's probably nervously seeing if there's any news out of the Highlanders. I think before the bye and before this game week, Mage was fairly confident that he was going to be back, but if I was still a Sopawanga, I would be wanting a little bit of insurance on the waiver wire this week with Fletcher Smith.
Yeah, I guess so. This is one of the frustrating things. I mean, clearly today in the New Zealand press, there were some journalists at Hurricanes training because they knew that who's the halfback we were talking about earlier?
Let's call him
Booth.
Junior Tonu'u.
Booth. Booth, right,
Yep.
Booth. Just came back to me. So Jamie Booth was training and TJ wasn't, and they knew that. So are there no journalists down in Dunedin? Can somebody not turn up to training and have a look and see if Lima's actually there? I mean, Jesus, really?
Yep. And the thing that frustrates me is that some of them are so cagey and sneaky that there's no kind of, I don't know. Are they trying to think there's a different game plan? It's a professional rugby game, right? They're going to plan for both encounters. It's not like you're going to all of a sudden sneak up and say, oh, okay, here you got Fletcher Smith, or all of a sudden Lima's going to go. They're going to bank on both scenarios. Frustrating.
Yeah. So yeah, you're right. He would be the talking point. I really don't think there's too much else until you see team sheets. I mean, Fed has started last time out. Will he start again? I mean, it's a good matchup for the Highlanders, I think. I'll probably go reasonably well.
Yep.
He'd be kind of the one guy that you probably sort of toing and froing over a little bit because everybody else is kind of nailed down in their positions, I think.
Yeah. No, I agree. I absolutely agree with that. I think two of the questions I've got for the Rebels is Dane Haylett-Petty. He got his bell rung pretty badly against the Waratahs a few weeks back. Whether he's recovered enough to push Jack back to the wing, not too sure. But the decision between Koroibete was pretty horrendous, and Naiyaravoro will be an interesting one as well. I guess they might look at who they're playing against and work the matchups in that respect. Crusaders, Matalei, come on down.
Yeah. I mean, another player on the list, like a form player, somebody that was available on waiver wires coming into this week, and therefore I'd say there's probably a reasonable chance he's still out there in a few leagues. And I know they're on a bye now, but that's probably the only time you're going to get a chance to pick him up. And the way things are going, you couldn't imagine why they would go back to Seta at the moment. It just wouldn't make any sense.
Yeah, I agree.
Did you know that Seta is Matalei's uncle?
I did know that, yeah.
I just think that's awesome.
It is pretty crazy, isn't it?
Yeah. Now, Israel Dag is going to be back, I think, for that Sunwolves game. Weirdly enough, the guy in the back line, in the back three that kind of looks the most under pressure is Havili in some ways. Like, he's the guy that's not really standing out. I mean, Matalei, based on what he's been doing, you'd think, you got to give this guy a spot. He brings that X factor that the Crusaders always like having, that kind of X factor player.
Yep.
In amongst the kind of, I don't want to call them journeymen, but, you could do if you're being unkind. And Bridges playing great, so I think he's pretty safe. So, you've got some, there's going to be some decisions to be made there.
Yeah, it is. Havili was one of the players I've got written down here as well to discuss because he hasn't been particularly good. We're kind of giving him a bit of a stay of execution when he went overseas because that's last year. He had a really good tour, played really, really well, and that's when they kind of sparked him at 15 and solidified him playing at 15. Dag, played for University in the weekend, came through it okay by the sounds of it. He sees himself as a right winger though now. I think I read an article and he firmly doesn't really, well, not firmly, but he really just sees himself as a right winger as opposed to a fullback. So it'll be interesting to see where that comes down because, I agree, Havili's not in the greatest form. Still, the Crusaders are playing well and, they're linking together well. So maybe he's doing the things that we don't necessarily accredit in a fantasy perspective, but a little bit worrying. big decisions to be made for Razor. He usually manages minutes. I don't know how Setter's going to come back in. I don't think he'll get into the centres. Certainly, they like to have that kind of Havili, Goodhue, Crotty, Bateman, as he said, midfield, and then have the kind of flyers outside. I'd be very, very worried if I was Setter owner. Would you be happy with him being cut? I mean, for say, I don't know. Let's go for, actually, I was going to go for somewhere in the Sunwolves, but let's go with someone you talked about, Chance Penny. How low do you go?
I think I'd probably rather have Penny at this point. Yeah, exactly.
He's a banker, even if he is like an outside back four, right?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I'm in pretty much all the leagues that I'm in. When you go to the waiver wire, find a playing outside back, and in past seasons it was quite easy to do. There just aren't any. You know, I've had to play guys that were playing off the bench.
Yep.
And yeah, it's tough to find somebody. So if you said, well, I've got somebody here, it may not be Penny, but he's going to play every week, I'll take that over Setter. You can't afford to be carrying somebody like that.
No, exactly. I don't see him coming back the week after the bye as well. So, especially if you're in a bit of a hole, you need every player playing every minute. Anything more from this? So yeah, Perry bust his thumb playing club rugby. Only dislocated it, I think. Quite what that means for a prop and the longevity. Frank's got through okay, but Reid won't be back. Sounds like Reid actually might be a doubt for the France series as well in June, which is a little bit concerning, but I guess they're going to manage him with kit gloves. Good to see Samu back if managers haven't picked that up, and he didn't score massive amounts of points because he only came on for the last X amount of minutes, but if folks haven't picked that up, then go and grab him at the end, probably the end of your bye week. I think you can probably do it because you're going to need all those spaces this week. Any more from the Crusaders?
No, except for you sort of dropped a hint about Mo'unga. So they've got the bye, then the Sunwolves. Do you think Mo'unga, I mean, he's kind of due back around then anyway?
Yep, I think he'll be back then. Hunt looks terrible. Yeah.
Sorry. So that was kind of where I was going, because I've got Hunt in a couple of leagues, but I'm basically thinking about dropping him this week because I think he's done anyway.
Yep. Yeah, who's your other fly half, I guess, is all I would ask. Who are you starting this week? Is it like a Harwoder or back up to DMaks or something?
Yeah, so it might end up being... Yeah, I mean, it depends who you can find. So I've got Hunt and DMaks, but obviously Hunt's not going to help me this week anyway. So, I'll probably drop Hunt for a Tamura, for instance, just to fill that space, or Marty Mack, whatever.
I would suggest that Mo'unga is probably going to come back off the bench against the Sunwolves if I had to kind of put my bank anywhere. So there is a chance that Hunt has some value at home against the Moondogs next week.
Sure.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if they thrust him straight back. And Sunwolves seems like a nice game to get half an hour in. Jaguares, your boy, De La Fuente.
Yes, so good to see him back, and he's a player that I wanted to talk about just because I think for a lot of folks who perhaps are new to the game, didn't play last season, with him being out, they possibly didn't realise how good he was. So he's someone that is possibly available on waiver wires as well, in leagues where guys perhaps aren't as experienced. And so, yeah, if you could find him, 100% go and grab him, because he was great last year, and even this game where he's probably not match fit, just stood out as just, having that little bit of class that a lot of them other guys don't.
He did. He warmed into the game as well. He just got better and better the further on he got. And he's quite silky. He's quite, he just cuts good lines, and he's a very, very impressive player. So yeah, couldn't agree with you more around, managers didn't know who De La Fuente was, going to pick him up. Another that probably same kind of ilk is Moyano, as well. Yep. So he's floating around. He's probably going to take... It's interesting listening to the commentators, whether it's Del Guy or Deli or whoever you want to pronounce it, who you're talking to.
Del Guy, yeah.
Exactly. Looks likely to take his spot, though, I would have thought, and look good for the few minutes that he was on.
Yeah, he's a bit more jinky, but I quite like Del Guy, though.
Yeah.
he's actually been good too. And he's a good finisher and he's got good speed. Obviously, Buffelli's been good on the other wing, so you'd say it wouldn't be him. I mean, I don't know what they'll do, whether they'll rotate, Tuvalet's probably pretty safe too. Whether it's an option that they shift, because Geronimo was playing 12, whether they could think about Buffelli at 13 and take out Orlando, I don't know. I mean, Orlando's not a great fantasy player, but he's probably one of those guys that maybe is a bit of a glue player in a back line, so maybe they'll stick by him.
Yeah, Paul Tate did suggest that as well, actually. It's a good shout that Buffelli, they see him as potentially a long-term at 13. It's the first time I've owned the Jaguares front row this season. Wow, they are junk.
Yeah, they are rubbish.
Pour a little bit out for the bloody Augustine Creevy. Sorry, Sonny Bill Creevy, which I believe his lawyers have been in touch that he has to be known as. Man, they are bad.
What
happened?
Well, what's interesting actually is that, and you're talking about Paul Tate, when you look at his Twitter feed, and he covers South American rugby, all across the board, and he quite often mentions how guys are performing in Europe that are Argentinian players, and he's consistently these hookers and front rowers that are playing over there and absolutely killing it in France.
Yeah,
and
Bosch was one that sprang to mind.
That's right. Yeah, I think he had a big game on this weekend. So, just it just drives me nuts, this rule they've got, about the Pumas having to all be Argentina based. So I think they're turning that around, and not before time. They really need to. So it just makes you wonder whether a lot of the talent actually is in Europe, and hence some of the pretty average performances by their front row here. Yeah,
absolutely. I was just hoping. Halfway through the game, I was like, man, at this point, I'll take a duck. I'll take a bold first ball. You didn't do any damage, didn't get any runs.
Yeah.
Good move.
You just wanted a black number. You didn't care what it was.
Absolutely. I mean, Creevy almost gave Taylor an assist, which would have been perfect for me. He was playing against the Crusaders front row. Anything more, mate, for this week? There's probably enough time.
No.
Cool. You can follow us on Twitter at Fantasy Rugby Draft, Fantasy RUG Draft, or drop us a note at support@fantasyrugbydraft.com. Tell all your mates about us, because that's how we get the information that we need to pass on to you guys. Thanks for downloading and listening. I'm Bruce Wilkinson. He's Nathan Mossman.
Hi there.
LG Rapido.
What a bust here by Christian Cullen. Plenty of support, and what a